the actual sound. What's the weirdest reaction
Robin.
from a patient doing a plastic?
I've had strings.
Robin, yeah, I don't know.
One guy almost break my
With the sphincter?
No, it was the clenching and the twisting. Well,
I was gonna say, because that's a strong sphincter.
well, he was a strong man. So
Why didn't they just slide out?
well, he clenched everything. I mean, he clamped.
Here's my cool. I'm about to do a pass.
Shit, I'm done. Fuck me, sorry. Shit.
I take my
Skinners, my monthly bio, and get other goods for my kids I went to school. Oh, got nuts right here. Ah, monkey butt. Okay, I should do this. Yeah.
I would have inserted, it would have just slid the skin right over.
I was diagnosed with my
Sorry, I'm telling you, fist. I meant, were you? Aaron, sorry.
No,
I'm sorry, okay. But you are Aaron. Wait, no. Oh, haha. I've been one way. Stupid Will. Will. Wah, wah, wah. Okay.
And we're just like, you know what?
Ah!
We're sick of this. Let's kill her.
This is called
Guys.
owning your own experience. Something terrible happens to you, and you
Ah!
found a unique way of coping with it.
Wait, doesn't
It's
he
a
come up?
positive outlet.
Doesn't he
Yeah,
come?
kill us. It's so much better.
Before 2 o'clock.
I'm running a little late. We haven't even opened up mail yet. It's 9:30, so
Oh, okay.
yeah, we can be ready.
Okay, let me know, okay, Mom? Because we need food in the house.
Yes to the question, but when I have to call you back. Hey, no. Erin wants to sit in her own chair. She doesn't want to sit in Evan's chair. So.
Yeah, you should know that.
There's one less thing out of the. Okay, sounds good.
Okay, we'll see you wonderful, okay, Mom?
Okay, be about 2 hours, probably.
9, 10, 11, okay. 11 o'clock, you know.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Bye.
Aaron, do you want the phone? Aaron, do you want the phone? Aaron! Yes or no? Thank you. Okay.
Not just medical. We should do it legally. Welcome to the channel, Legal Eagle. Hey, Legal Eagles.
Doctors never mean to screw up.
Crap is the last thing you want to hear in a surgical room.
If I saw a transcript that said crap, I mean, I would see $, $.
It's not like we want to hurt anyone, but sometimes we do. Sometimes we make mistakes.
And the lawyers make it right. I'm looking for Dr. Flores.
Yes. Hi.
Great. You get sued.
Is that how it happens?
Sort of. In a medical malpractice situation like this, you obviously have to start the lawsuit somehow. And the way you do that is called process service. And if you didn't know where the person was, where they worked, or you didn't know who the lawyer was, then you would have to hire someone called a process server to actually physically hand you.
Is that the person like throws it at you and says you?
It can.
Because I've seen that in movies. They throw it and it's like, oh, I got served. What does that mean?
I mean, you need to have a competent adult who is able to verify that this is the person who is being sued.
So throwing it in a door.
That is not best practice.
Okay.
No.
Ready to build me a new hip? Needs to be able to do this. See? Right there. New hip do that.
More importantly, will he be doing it by December? He's got Olympic qualifiers coming up.
You mentioned a crash last year?
His son gave me arthritis. You can't win the gold with arthritis. I want the Peterson hip.
Would one hard crash cause arthritis for the rest of his young career?
It sounds off. The only thing I can imagine is if you have a significant loss of cartilage or potentially a labral tear. But there's other procedures that you can go about from an orthopedic standpoint rather than just replacing the hip. Also, what they're asking of the doctors is not practical at all. To make promises that he's going to be able to do a move, that promise on recovery time, none of this is ever guaranteed. Because in medicine, you don't even know what's going to happen until you open a patient up, especially in a specific case. Like, this is hyper-specific. He's not a run-of-the-mill joint replacement patient.
Right. It's funny you say that because one of the first cases you learn about in law school is called Hawkins versus. You might have heard of it colloquially because it's called the hairy hand case rule, where in the turn of the century, a doctor had a patient who had a hand. I think his hand was burned, and the doctor promised that not only would he have a fully functional hand, but it would be 100% recovered. And he had a skin graft, and as a result, he was not given a 100% normal hand, but a hand that was functional but hairy. And so the lawsuit was, can you recover damages for the breach of the promise that was given when he was promised a 100% normal hand and given a hairy hand? And the answer is yes, you have to value whatever the difference is in money between a normal hand and a hairy hand.
Buddy of mine got this one. He was back on the mountain in no time. This is what I mean.
Okay. Even if I did agree that a hip replacement is the right course of treatment, I've never even used the Peterson resurfacing hip joint. I doubt you or your team want you to be my first.
Yes. No experience whatsoever, barreling forward without doing the research and making specific promises. This is
A lot of patients in general treat medicine as if it's like a shopping. I want X. When in reality, sometimes X isn't what's best for the patient. And sometimes it puts you in this murky position where the patient feels like they're not getting what they want. You're not giving it to them because you think it's not in their best interest. And then they do something like legal review for you on one of these websites. And as a result, you can't even comment on that. Because legally, you're breaking patient privacy if you comment on that.
oh, I never thought about that. That's absolutely right.
I'll research the joints, learn what I can. I'm not making any promises.
I'm not worried. I mean, despite the fact that she appears to have been actually making promises, it is obviously good that she is going to do some research here. It's not necessarily dispositive that a doctor hasn't done a procedure before and is therefore negligent based on whatever outcome happens. But often in cases like this, at least the manufacturer has an interest in making sure that their own products are installed correctly. So, to my knowledge, medical manufacturers will give doctors extensive training so that things are done correctly on the user end.
They will send in a rep during the time of the procedure to be with us and guide us with the questions that we may have. And they're really well trained because a lot of the stuff, tech-wise, comes out so soon. You just have to have them on the same page.
Not settling.
You convinced me.
Okay.
I tried.
There are things to remember tomorrow. Let the jury see your face.
Wait, tomorrow?
Right.
What?
How fast is that?
That's ridiculous. This is a conversation that they would be having on day 1, on day 2, on day 3. This would be a multi-year process.
Let the jury see your face. Wear suit, dark, not bright. Skirt, not pants. Minimal jewelry. Heels, pantyhose.
Anyhow.
Professional but feminine. You still get what I mean? Wear it. Juries respond better to married men and families.
That's a little misogynistic there. I mean, so there's a whole science to presenting yourself in front of the jury. This is going a little bit crazy in terms of the specifics. I mean, you want to dress nicely. There are whole memes on the internet about Takashi 6969 showing up to court with like tattoos all over his face, his tie like down to here, and like his shirt out and stuff. So you don't want to show up to court looking like that.
Okay.
Being so specific about what you're wearing. Like, she's a doctor. She's
Colors, does it matter?
not really.
Yeah.
Maybe on the extreme margins.
Ready?
Sure.
Okay. As someone who knows a fair bit about men's fashion, what do you notice about the shirt that this guy is wearing?
It's different color and probably cuffs.
Yeah. So he's wearing what's called a contrast collar and French cuff.
Yes.
Which is, if I had to
Yes.
choose the most pretentious thing you could possibly wear with a suit, I would say contrast colors. Now, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a tobacco tycoon maybe, and you're drinking a mint julep on a patio, contrast colors are great. I believe that there's only one proper color for a shirt, which is white.
Okay.
But that
It makes shopping a lot easier, right? An above the knee amputation is usually a more aggressive. always try and go below the knee for stability
Okay, so
purposes.
sorry, it takes
Also, there's a
forever.
lot of blood vessels here that are really dangerous. So most patients that I see who have amputations, it's like diabetes complications, gangrene, are below.
Okay,
the
what am I
knee
doing?
amputations. It's rare for me, at least in primary care, to see it.
I imagine you want to save something below the knee so that the prosthesis is more functional.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you rise when the judge comes in? So that is great. There's a whole science, pseudoscience to making your client presentable and human in front of the jury. And you're technically not allowed to talk to them, except in opening statement and closing argument. So anything you can do to humanize your client, the better. Notice he's not wearing a tie. Makes sense. He's a young guy. Humanizes him a little bit. But just to kind of get that jab in and say, oh gosh, I can't stand up because of this horrible thing that the doctor did to me. That's really driving home the point. It's not going to show up on any transcript anywhere.
Serving as a juror in a medical malpractice case is easy. No, I'm no doctor. Barely made it through high school biology.
Okay, fine.
But you are going to get a crash course education in orthopedic medicine and post-operative infection. You're going to hear words like pseudomonas and emboli. I need to teach you.
So the sort of aw shucks thing, like, I'm not a doctor, blah, 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 that can be good. But you want to pair that with making the defense seem like they're the ones that are trying to overly complicate the task. And that you're the speaker of truth. You're going to tell them exactly what happened. You're not hiding it. In an opening statement like this, what you want to say is,
Okay, I'm gonna do to be everything else.
medical jargon. The defense wants you to be but you want to transition to one thing you want the jury to remember throughout the entire case. The lodestar that they can hold on to. Say, despite all this complicated stuff, we're going to explain it to you. The one thing you need to remember is this.
Dr. Torres agreed to perform the surgery. We will establish that Dr. Torres made a series of faulty decisions, eventually costing Mr. Travis Reed, a thriving, healthy Olympic athlete, leg. We will establish that all of this started because of one careless.
So that's not bad. It's a little argumentative. An opening statement is not like a closing argument where you're allowed to make whatever argument you want. An opening statement is there so that you can tell the jury what is going to happen, what evidence is going to come out based on discovery. What I don't like about this is that he has put the stakes too high. This doctor made one huge mistake, and this doctor did something she didn't understand. If I was the defense
You would just
counsel,
disprove that.
exactly, I would say, on my closing argument, I would say, remember when the plaintiff's attorney said the doctor didn't understand that? Well, you heard from the doctor. She did 100 hours of research, corresponded with the manufacturer, and brought the manufacturing rep out to participate in surgery. She knew what she was doing.
Is it true that in medical malpractice cases, unlike the burden of proof being beyond a reasonable doubt, it just has to be more likely?
That's exactly correct. And that is the case with all the it's called the preponderance of evidence.
All right, let's start closing irrigation. Please wait. The sponge cap is off. We're missing one sponge. Are you kidding me? Yeah, close it. We find it.
So this is true. We do a very careful sponge count before and after the procedure prior to makes it easier to spot. You could also leave that plastic ring outside of the body so you know to take the sponge out. So there's been a lot of adjustments to improve here. Really, it still happens.
Are you saying that Dr. Torres knew she left Mr. Reed's body and she didn't care?
No, of course she cared, but
No, but still, she knowingly left the
Who is this on the stand?
Exactly. This is one of the nurses or doctors in the hospital. So the plaintiff, as apparently his first witness, has called a hostile witness. That is insane. Juries, like all humans, have the primacy and latency. So they're going to remember what they heard first, and they're going to remember what they heard last.
Yes.
So, using that to your advantage, at this point to the stand, you would call either plaintiff himself, tell the entire sad story of what happened to him, or you call your expert, who is going to explain explain
On your side.
all of the medical stuff from the secondary material, you would never call a witness that is basically on the other side.
Yeah.
The patient was running out of time. You would have.
It's a yes or no question.
Hun.
Got a boy in college. Good kid. And I went to visit him last month. And you would not believe what I found. I mean, this whole television.
Ask a question.
report on that thing.
Objection. Irrelevant. Yes, that was irrelevant, but that's like the fifth most important objection to make here. He's just telling the story. I got this kid in college. He's a real mess. He left a sponge in the sink. The only thing you're allowed to do during examination is ask questions. That's it.
Let's fast forward to the next time we saw the story.
About 2 weeks later.
What's he been? Good? Happy? Recovering well?
He had an infection. Hey there. Travis, I hear you got quite the fever. Temps 103 and starting his workup. He's burning up.
And she said this is weeks later?
Apparently.
But weeks later, she's just seeing him for the first time. Like, she would see him the next day.
That sounds negligent.
Dad is forced to come in. How you feeling, Travis?
Wait, he went home with a fever?
No.
Post-surgical fever can happen, and there's like a thing that we remember in medical school called the 5 Ws: wind, water, walking, wonder drugs. And they all mean something different. UTIs, pulmonary embolism is one of them, wind being pneumonia, medications you could be taking causing fever, and you try and rule things out. But the fact that he went home with the fever and he's 103, that's a really high fever. That should be thoroughly investigated. So Dilara, listen to me.
Travis, gonna take a look at
Listen to the right side.
okay?
Well, it's funny, when you listen for hard sounds, you actually listen starting on the right side of the body. And a lot of people, patients that are medically in tune from watching shows or have some curiosity, they'll say, "Doc, where's the left side?" I'm like, well, there are blood vessels that come off the heart that are on the right side that we listen to as well. The pulmonary artery, so you want to listen there and then make your way to the aorta, listen to the chambers of the heart. So, yeah, we do listen on the right side to hear the heart.
That looks bad.
That looks like an
Oh,
infected
wow.
wound.
What does OL mean?
Yeah, so when we give medical feedback, when we listen to a patient's lungs, when we look at wounds, we tend not to exclaim our feelings. So we don't say that sounds scary, that's good, that's not. It's either normal or abnormal, and you keep it at that.
I don't like to worry. One looks a little infected.
A little infected.
Okay.
He looks like a zombie. What I'm seeing right here is all kinds of reasons why the hospital could have not only contributed to the initial negligence, but committed its own malpractice as well, which is that this patient is being sent home too early.
Yes.
This patient is not being checked on regularly. And to the extent that they are checking on this patient, they're not examining the wound where the surgery took place.
Yeah.
So
That wound did not get infected. That's been an infection that's been festered. And generally speaking, after you have surgery, you have not only follow-ups with the surgeon, you have follow-ups with your primary care doctor, all of which times we do vitals, we check the wounds. In fact, anytime a patient now is hospitalized, we have one of our nurses call the patient the next day to make sure they understand the medicines they should be taking, what symptoms are they experiencing, and if anything is off, they come right back.
And what about the murmur? If the infection will travel to his heart, his vitals are stable. We've got to clean out that joint, okay? We can't afford any delays.
See, another thing that's untrue. How does she know the wound is not just infected versus the joint?
well, at this point, they might as well just paint a dollar sign on top of the hospital.
Exactly.
And this doctor might as well be making lots of cash.
Honestly, I think if you can probably create your own law firm that just targets their patients, because
Post-op infections are very common. They happen all the time.
That's your professional opinion.
It is.
And in your professional opinion, it's also common for
Where's
post-op
that?
infection results in a double amputation. Does that happen all the time?
You don't know what she's going to say right now. She might say,
Yes.
in a situation like this, where this went wrong, his heart blew up, he had a lung problem. Yeah, that's exactly
Oh,
what
I
I would
know what
expect
that
to see. And
is.
these doctors did a fantastic job. That's completely impeccable.
what would he have done?
Thank you, Your
What
Honor.
did he do?
Why did you page me sooner? We just heard the murmur this morning. Yeah. Look at this growth. You knew he was a heart patient. This didn't concern you? Of course it did. That's why you're here. So what do we do? The infection is eating away at his graft.
So not only is he having a fever because his joint is infected, which she knew somehow without doing anything, but his heart valve also has an infection on it. Vegetation means it has actual bacterial growth on it. And she's only performing the surgery on his leg, but not on the heart.
Taurus, you need to see this. was changing his compression socks and I saw this legs gray, cold. I can't find a pulse.
Why are you checking all the time?
Yeah, exactly. So when a patient is laying in a hospital, they're not just passively laying there. The reason they're in the hospital is because there are wound checks every few hours, neuro checks. The residents come in and round on the patient every morning, look at the wound, look at the leg.
And it seems like it's an area where there's already been some problems.
Yeah.
You probably don't want to hide them behind compression socks.
Yes, exactly.
Where's Whitney? I told her she'd time to grab lunch before Travis woke up. Alright, you need to go find her and tell her.
That's an ultrasound, portable ultrasound machine that we use to hear blood flow. And the reality of it, you don't need that for his leg. You can see that it's not getting circulation.
Okay, I've got to go in and do an embolectomy on this.
No, I gotta go.
So an embolectomy, like they're saying that a blood clot has now traveled to his arteries. I can't even follow this. There's nothing, there's no medical sense.
I mean, doesn't that presume that a blood clot has flown down to his
Arterial system.
in his leg?
Yeah, which means it did a full with his body. It just,
If I don't try this embolectomy, he could lose his leg.
Live without a leg. You can't live without a functioning heart.
If you do the heart tomorrow, it gives him an extra day on antibiotics, right? He'll be more stable, and the heart surgery will be less risky. Christina, this is Travis Reed we're talking about.
Hold on.
Let me try to save his leg.
Does the course of treatment change?
here's the weird situation.
Why aren't people checking on him?
Yeah. Why is he the one pointing that out?
Yeah.
And why are they so casually strolling in like he's basically throwing more clots. And the fact that they waited to do his heart, it's obviously she's guilty.
This is a civil suit.
Yeah.
He's not guilty. She's liable.
Right.
And I think so is the hospital
Yeah.
here.
And notice where his necrosis was starting
Below the knee.
Why do they know that?
Oh man, that's.
If you want to see the rest of our analysis, click here for part 2 on Legal Eagles channel.
Check out.
Welcome to Celebrity Finally. There's a lot of great people playing on the show. They're all gonna get their ass whooped either way.
Yeah, I do that.
Bullseye.
It's a dirty game already.
I'm so confused.
Some recipes taste better when they're prepared together. Just enough happiness, a pinch of fun.
That's it? On that? Plaintiff's lawyer. He's trying to get damages on behalf of his clients and snowboarders. 2 script errors. That's like getting your name wrong. Hey, Legal Eagles, by popular demand, I'm finally tackling a medical drama that involves malpractice. But for that, I think I'm going to need a medical consultation. Doctor? We're ready for surgery. Let's dig in.
Are we losing this case?
Too early to panic. We haven't presented our strength. There he is.
You haven't presented
Anything. Where was his opening statement?
Where was it? Where was his opening statement? Where were all the questions that he was asking of the other witnesses?
Yeah, don't they, like, after the witness presents plaintiff, right away the defense gets to speak to him?
Yes. Well, there's 2 ways of doing an opening statement. You can do what's called reserving the opening statement, where instead of giving your opening statement immediately after the plaintiff, you wait until the plaintiff has presented their whole case. And then at the start of your case, then you give your own opening statement. And there are strategic reasons why you might do that. In a case like this, you would 100%
Want to go right after.
get right in there, explain all the things that the plaintiff not explain to you, and get your theme out there, which is that this is a bad thing that happened to a good kid. It's not a matter of medical negligence. It's just that all of these complications that no one could have foreseen happen, cause this whole cascade of things for the doctors did everything.
His legs were black. I knew it wasn't good. They had cut them off that night.
So this is the plaintiff's girlfriend. She would have been a great witness to start things off.
Telling the story.
Telling the story.
Emotional, sad.
No medical stuff whatsoever, and whatever she witnessed firsthand is going to be colored by a layperson. It's going to seem really horrible based on what she saw. That would be a great way to get your story out there.
And did you have any indication that Dr. Torres was worried about something like amputation? Did she ever mention that it might be a risk?
No. She was worried about it. She was worried worried about what it would do to their reputation.
I have no idea.
I heard her talking in the hallway. She didn't know I could hear her. Said I can't be the doctor who turns Olympic athletes into a doorstop.
Is that hearsay? That sounds hearsay.
That is exactly an example of hearsay. However, there is an exception to the
God,
hearsay.
no damage.
The 801(2) Federal Rules of Evidence. That is an admission by a party opponent. So this is the plaintiff using the statement of defendant against them. Arguably, this is an admission by a party opponent or a declaration against interest. It's also being used for its non-hearsay value in terms of she's literally turning someone into a doorstep, which is incredibly on PC. I can't believe they included that in here. But also that she was flustered, she was worried, she partially admitting fault. So it sort of informs all of her downstream action.
Can you get off of that thing for 5 seconds and look at this plate? Yeah, no, hold on a sec. I'm just I'm following up on that clinical trial in Germany using Peterson hip joints, trying to get them to send me their data.
We're not going to release anything until it's published.
Sometimes they will. It's called a preprint publication.
Is that the kind of research that an orthopedic surgeon would do before doing surgery for the first time? Using a hip that she's never used before?
It should be. Because you want to know what the implications of using the joint would be, what side effects patients had, especially if it's different than the research that already.
I would expect that surgeon at the top of her field would research clinical trials. She would examine whatever publications the
That's a really
manufacturer has
good
put out.
fight.
It's not like there's hundreds of studies that they have.
What do you
There's
think?
like a handful that are good quality. So like 2-3 studies that you go through, you know them inside out, you know what the complications are, and you present it to the patient, getting them to understand what the risks are. And again, that's not the core of the problem. The core of the problem is how she acted after the procedure. So like that's the real. I don't think the joint is even the problem.
There, done.
Oh, that's it? That's how she does her research? Like, oh, okay, now let's show me this.
I sent a text.
Yeah.
Trying to explain that to the jury.
Yeah.
You have to believe me. I did everything I could.
Look at this text. DM the author.
That actually would have come out in evidence.
Really?
Oh yeah, there would be so much discovery in document requests. You would absolutely look for electronic documents, including
Oh my God.
emails, texts, anything that references the hip, Travis Reed, the snowboarder. You'd ask for all of that from the doctor, and it would have been turned over to the other side.
So, for example, the plaintiff can request personal emails as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's really the bread and butter of litigation. People are relatively smart in terms of not saying things that they shouldn't say, or at least not having a record of it. People say all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't know.
Hey, Travis. Hey. So I'm thinking about snowboarding. In fact, I picked up a board, Burton.
A board?
No, you can't ask these questions.
There's better boards for beginners. What size shoe are you?
I'm a 13.
I want to look into an extra wide. Jack doesn't hang over too much. A little overhang's fine, but too much is going to cause drag.
And it drags back.
Objection, Your Honor. Where's this going?
Objection, where is this going? That is not an objection recognized by the Federal Rules of Evidence. You'd be objecting from the very start of this. This is not relevant. I get it, you're trying to humanize your client, but the way you would do that is establishing the background that is actually relevant to his economic and non-economic damages. It's not
Oh my God. At least 5-10 minutes into it, you know? Maybe 5
And that would be a
minutes.
huge part of this case too, in terms of disputing whether he would even be able to snowboard in the future. Because remember, he started out this episode with arthritis. Arthritis so severe that he couldn't land the trick. He couldn't land the trick, and he needed a replacement hip. That's one of the reasons why you might bifurcate a trial like this, which means that half of the trial is about establishing liability. Who was negligent? Which parties were negligent? Doctor, hospital, etc. And then only once you have established the relative fault. So you can have this person's responsible for 10%, this person's responsible for 50%. Once you've established that, then you would go forward into damages. And then there would be a huge battle where the defense would say, maybe we were negligent, but this poor kid was never going to be able to snowboard again anyway. Therefore, we don't owe damages in the form of this lawsuit.
Dr. Torres had never actually done an operation.
Objection, speculation. He knows that.
Okay, we're gonna lock off right
That's
here.
an example where probably
See you guys next time.
hearsay wouldn't come in.
Maybe
Speculation.
Friday, you know, work off wise. Yes, I'm working ways to Thursday, 11 o'clock a.m. It's just, I keep my small videos, not the big ones, you know. Yeah, bye.